What's going on, y'all? Wanted to get into this topic about philosophy and Christianity. All right, so let's start with what philosophy is. So Socrates, he gave a stirring defense for living the life of a philosopher in which he claimed the unexamined life is not worth living. What does he mean? Specifically, what is the unexamined life? And what did Socrates mean when he said it was not worth living? Now, Socrates often ran into individuals who were immersed in the daily activities of life, who rarely took time to stop and think about what they were doing and why they were doing it. Pause. This is still happening today. At most, we take time to examine what's happening in the nation. That's super easy to get wrapped up in. And I think that that's a distraction. That is a cop-out to not thinking seriously about what it is we're doing with our lives. He explains how they were going through the motions of life without making the effort to reflect and think about what life is about. That is the unexamined life. 100%. When we look at a worldview, we have 5 things that we want to discuss, and one of them is purpose. What is our purpose? There are other things like our origin, our morals, our destiny, and I'm forgetting one, and then of course our purpose. When you actually have conversations with people and try to figure out what their worldview is, they cannot define that. They can't actually tell you what their worldview is. At most, it's like this buffet of different competing worldviews that they've picked and chose what things that they like at a given time. But if you actually hold them up to one another, there's a lot of conflictions. This is heavy in people that are caught up in New Age types of worldviews, because you have people who are trying to mix in things like Buddhism and Hinduism, which are actually 2 competing worldviews that don't believe in the same things as one another. Myself included. I remember there was a time in my life where I got caught up in a lot of the New World teachings, but I was just trying to figure things out on a spiritual level. So it's not uncommon. There's nothing inherently wrong. It's just, you shouldn't stop there. You shouldn't, okay, well, I'm gonna look at all of these things. Well, it's too hard for me to actually examine them all, so I'm just gonna stop. That's where a lot of people get stuck. And if you simply go a little bit further into this examined life that Socrates talks about, in his defense, Socrates suggests some of his accusers might ask, why can't you live quietly and stop talking? Why you gotta ask so many questions, bro? To which he answers, it is the greatest good for a man to discuss virtue every day, and those other things about which you hear me conversing and testing myself and others for the unexamined life is not worth living for man. This applied to me as well. In America, we unfortunately have an issue with fatherlessness, effect and an impact, especially on young men trying to figure out what their purpose is in life. Socrates points out something important. He says that human beings are unique in the animal kingdom because by nature of the kind of being they are, the inherent ability to reason and reflect about themselves and the world around them. Other animals don't do that. We as human beings are the only ones that have the ability to reason and reflect. And why is it that only humans can reason and reflect and use these minds to examine themselves and the world around them? Socrates claims that the unexamined life is not worth living. He is saying we are not living the life we were created to live. To live the unexamined life is to live a less than fully human life. Human beings are designed to be able to reflect on the meaning and value of life and the world around them. And this is what philosophers are trying to wrestle with. There is a certain amount of truth to the cliche, ignorance is bliss. The answer to the truth question, it is important to see that Socrates is making a normative claim. We have our first thing that we're going to define. It's important to define terms, especially when we're talking about philosophy. But a normative claim makes a claim about some action persons ought to do. Someone says you should not lie, or you should help your fellow human, she is making a normative claim. It's about the way you should behave. Socrates is not just saying that rationally reflecting about life is the way a human is. He is saying that because a person is a rational creature, that person has an obligation to behave like one. It's a responsibility that we should take seriously and act accordingly. No other being in the animal kingdom has this ability. So what is philosophy? Broadly speaking, it is examining life. And so what is wisdom? Okay, that is obviously an important thing to hit on next. Wisdom has less to do with how much one knows. That's what a lot of us think it is. It's all about like gaining knowledge. But you could have all this knowledge and be college educated and know all these things and just absolutely suck at putting it into practice. So wisdom is more to do with how one uses the knowledge they have. An argument is not a battle to be fought and won, but rather a means for communicating a message. That's exactly what I was just saying. Our definition of an argument is the process of giving a systematic account of reasons in support of a claim or belief. Instead of thinking about winning an argument, we would do better to think about winning someone over to our side. That is, we want to persuade someone that the position we are defending really is true, to convince them so that they genuinely change their mind and come to agree with the position we are defending. We aim to persuade, encourage, and prepare, not to win. Persuade, encourage, prepare. All right? Claims and beliefs. Mentioned that in the little preview. They go hand in hand. For anything you believe, you can state that belief in the form of a claim. When we communicate our beliefs to others, we state them in the form of claims. So for most of our discussion, we will be using words claim and belief interchangeably, all right? And we'll read it. So stating a claim by itself is almost never good enough if we want others to understand why we believe what we believe, or if we want to persuade them that we have a good reason supporting our beliefs. Consider the example above. In some context, it will probably be sufficient to simply make the claim about where the Hunger Games was filmed. Instead of merely stating the claim, we must provide good reasons that help show why we think that claim is true. All right? Sometimes claims don't need much in the way of supporting reasons. If you are watching the Hunger Games with a group of friends who don't think your claim is all that important, they might just accept it without any supporting reasons. Like, okay, you think that was in Australia? All right, cool. So you probably don't need to say much else. This is similar to many everyday claims we make. For example, a claim like it's raining doesn't need much of an argument for support. We can just point to the window and say, look, it's raining, right? You can see that. You can come to that same conclusion. But for complicated and contentious claims, or claims made to an audience that is inclined to disagree, an argument is needed to justify and support the claim. The more contentious or divisive the claim, the more careful, well thought out, and intentional the argument needs to be. Let's go over that. The more careful, well thought out, and intentional the argument must be. We don't need to support unimportant and uninteresting claims with good arguments. This we'll get into later on about fallacies, because a lot of times people will throw out what's called a red herring to get you to start talking about something that is unimportant and not even related to what the claim and position that you're currently engaged in trying to discuss. But for the important questions in life, such as questions about the morality of capital punishment, existence of God, the nature of marriage, being able to argue well becomes an indispensable skill. Claims about important questions will always require good arguments to support them. Arguments are beneficial not just for others, but for yourself as well. They help you communicate and support your personal beliefs. So, philosophy, according to Plato, is a gift from the gods to the mortal race, whose value neither has been nor ever will be surpassed. So that's high praises. For Plato, there is ultimately no conflict between philosophy and belief in God or gods. a higher power, so to speak. Philosophy leads the truth seeker inevitably to its divine source. Today, the relationship between faith and philosophy, revelation and reason, is not always viewed in such a positive light, as we shall see later on. Contrary to Plato, the contemporary French philosopher Luc Ferry, maybe mispronouncing that, thinks philosophy is inherently atheistic. Okay? This would be a perfect thing that, someone like Plato and Ferry would need to have reasoned arguments for why they hold that position and enter into debate about it. But we'll probably get into that later. So according to Ferry, the salvation that philosophy prompts us to seek must proceed not from an other, from some being supposedly transcendent, meaning exterior to, superior to ourselves, but well and truly from within. Philosophy wants us to get ourselves out of trouble by utilizing our resources by means of reason alone with boldness and assurance. So that's what this guy Ferry believes, who thinks that philosophy is inherently atheistic, that it comes from within. Good arguments, making your case, and writing and public speaking. We briefly described the basic components of a short argument, and that is an argument contains a series of statements known as premises that are intended to support another statement, which is your conclusion. An argument's conclusion is the claim or belief that is being defended or supported by the premises, and the premises are the reasons that attempt to prove the claim is true. And here it is. Reason 1 or premise 1, reason 2, and then your conclusion, which is the claim or belief that is being defended by the two premises. Premise 1, all men are mortal. Okay? Premise 2, Socrates is a man. Conclusion, therefore, Socrates is mortal. Very simple, right to the point. That is a clear-cut argument. Men are mortal, Socrates is a man, Socrates is mortal. That's your conclusion, all right? So good arguments will always clearly state their claims and all relevant supporting reasons. Whenever you're talking to someone and they can't give you good reasons that are clearly stated or why they hold their position, that is a red flag for you to make note of. It is possible that this person does not have the intention of having good arguments or may be unequipped to defend a position that they're holding. This could also apply to ourselves. So before engaging in conversation with someone, make sure that you've taken the time to support the conclusion you've reached. Why do you believe what it is you believe? Some arguments do not state their premises clearly. This is a characteristic of weak arguments, what I just said, that cannot do what they are intended to do. Premises are designed to be declarative statements that convey some meaningful fact in support of the claim. Sometimes, however, a meaningful fact essential to the argument is not stated at all. Such unstated elements are called hidden premises. It is in Colossians 2, verse 8, see to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit. All right, I think these are very important things to talk about because people will see this and use it as a proof text to say, well, you shouldn't have to do philosophy because, it says so in the Bible. And right there, that is an example of a weak argument. Proof texting is not inherently the end-all be-all of making a solid conclusion. The thing I wanted to point out here is empty deceit and being captive to that. So obviously there are practices in philosophy that lead to some conclusions that not everyone is going to agree on, and there are some practices in philosophy that are intentionally deceptive. Whenever you're looking at things like the life of Jesus, for example, in the Gospels, and they're questioning him, and he's practicing philosophy. He's giving reasons. He's challenging the positions that people who are questioning him are holding. Just keep that in mind and take some time, maybe go back over some of the stories and think about how is philosophy being practiced in these instances. Let me know what you guys think would be a good example from the Gospels of Jesus practicing philosophy and having a good argument with some supporting premises. But yeah, that's where I'm going to end it here today. I appreciate you guys checking this out. I'm looking forward to getting further into all of this. There's certainly a lot of things to cover in philosophy and how it relates to Christianity. But yeah, thank you guys again. Y'all have a good day. Peace.